and welcome back to Mini Motley Sanctuary. I'm Anna and Mum is Ruth, and together we are a mother-daughter duo running our safe haven for animals who we've rescued from slaughter and trauma. And we are currently just finishing up heatwave number 5 this summer. It's been unbearable. We're in a drought. We haven't had any rain since the beginning of June, so that's now nearly 3 months without a drop of rain. We've had record-breaking temperatures in Suffolk at 38.4 with a feels-like temperature of 41 degrees. And the Dunwich wildfire that broke out just 2 weeks ago, been all over the news, is just 20 minutes down the road from our animal sanctuary, and it has been devastating. The fire has engulfed an area that spans the size of 210 football pitches, right the way across the nature reserve and RSPB Minsmere. We wanted to take you along to a very special evening with illustrator Charlie Mackesy, who we all know and love as the author of The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. He put on a very special evening with the RSPB and with the National Trust to talk at length, in depth, all about the wildfires and climate change and how it's affecting Suffolk. So come along with us. We're going to take you to Thorington Theatre, which is an outdoor theatre in the woodland. It's absolutely beautiful. And let's find out more about what's going on with this devastating wildfire just down the road from Mini Motley Sanctuary.
To Dunwich Heath, the rare habitat it gives, and the 2,754 recorded species that have lived there and live there. The 217 varieties of birds, the Dartford warblers, the stonechats, the nightingales, the nightjars, the falcons, the woodlarks, the lizards, they're not birds, the snakes, the narrow-mouthed wall, snails, ant lions, slow worms and insects, green tiger beetles, spider wasps and all kinds of delicate, fragile creatures, and the vegetation and the western gorse and the birch and oak and Scotch pine trees, all of this. And to the community around it, the firefighters, the wardens and the farmers who fought so bravely to save it, and to its future and to its restoration and to its healing, and to you for coming and all those who have loved it, and the A-level students who may be more anxious than usual. And to cake lovers everywhere, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's been quite an emotional day for me, actually, on a personal note. It's the first day I've been away from either the fire site or my laptop, actually, since the fire began just over a fortnight ago. And it's brought a lot of stuff to mind. One of the things, I was talking to Lindy about kind of how many people we have here. Dunwich Heath usually sees about 140,000 visitors a year. And so coincidentally, the number of people in this audience is about the number we would usually see on an average day this time of year, walking at Dunwich, enjoying the heath, taking that respite, you know, the benefit that that incredible landscape brings. I can see people nodding, and I can tell already how deeply connected many of you will be to that incredible landscape. The colours, you're also bright and colourful, and again, that is reminding me of the heather and the gorse that are always on that heath. It's hard to overstate the impact, the devastation that we felt at the National Trust site at Dunwich. Almost the entire site north of Coast Guard Cottage has been absolutely devastated to the point where it's unrecognisable even to those very familiar with the site, like myself. Was out on the heath with the fire crew. Some places I didn't even recognise. The ground itself, the heat in the ground, although some of it hasn't burned for weeks, well over a week in some places. You touch the back of your hand to the ground, it's still well over 60 degrees. So that heat is now trapped and is still cooking under the ground. Some pockets of heat in rabbit burrows and burned out tree stumps are above 600 to 800 degrees still. It's unbelievable when you imagine the fire has been out more than a week now. There are other hazards. The dust there is something else to see, this incredibly fine particulate dust and ash. We've been fitted and wearing respirators. The cliffs are exposed. Some of you may have heard about things like unexploded ordnance they found. You will know it was a training ground in World War II, so that too is a hazard. Not only ordnance, other stuff that's been buried under the vegetation, barbed wire, bits of brick, trip hazards, things like that. So it's an extremely dangerous place to be, even though the fire is out. We had my team, RSPB team, Natural England Rangers, seconded on the front lines with those firefighters, felling trees, digging fire breaks with our equipment, until eventually the local farm community and a brilliant contractor, Sam from Ipswich, came in with some heavier equipment to take over from us. They brought in bulldozers, they brought in rotavators to again cut those fire breaks. And then again, they were succeeded when we really needed some serious equipment. The Sizewell C groundworks team came in with some really, really heavy equipment. The helicopter pilot had been out in Greece. He came flying back from Bedfordshire, came down, and he worked tirelessly, him and the ground crew, and was instrumental in putting out that fire. We had the communities of Dunwich and Westleton, so there were a number of displaced people, almost 50 people displaced from their homes, and I've never seen anything like it. That community centre open 24/7, volunteers just from the local community opening their homes, making tea, just putting their arms around each other. It was really, really incredible. To say it was moving is to say almost nothing. And I think if there's one positive that's come out of that, it's this community spirit, and I can see that again today.
So the teams at National Trust and RSPB work very closely together. The heathland that covers the two sites, when the birds arrive to that land, they're not coming to say, oh, we're going to go on the RSPB bit, or we're going to go on the National Trust bit. To them, it's one heathland. And as you all know, when you walk across that landscape, it's a continuous piece of landscape. And part of that explains, why the fire spread across it, so across both our land holdings. I think we'd both taken advice from the fire service prior to the event. We both had fire breaks. The land, it's been heathland since at least the early 1800s, probably much longer. So, over 200 years, the habitat's been there. But we've worked together to manage that land and to manage it really for the benefit of the nature that occurs there. And some of those birds that Charlie mentioned in the introductions, the Dartford warblers, the nightjars, the woodlarks, are at their highest population levels recorded. So we'd hope to be able to stand here tonight and be celebrating that rather than talking about the devastation that's occurred. And so that the heartbreak that leaves for the staff, the volunteers, the teams who've been involved working hard to create that habitat, but also to seek to make it resilient. So the fire service had said to us, up until this event, all the appropriate precautions are in place. This event, the fire service is saying they have not seen anything similar to it in 25 years of firefighting. Russell mentioned the ground temperatures. In nature conservation, we talk a lot at the moment about 30 by 30, which is trying to get 30% of the land managed well for nature by 2030. The fire service reported in this instance, it was a 30 by 30 by 30 situation. So you had more than 30 degrees heat, you had more than 30% humidity, and you had more than 30 mile an hour winds. And that combination meant when the fire caught, it could spread at 50 meters per minute. So that rate of fire spread. And the first evening when the fire took hold, we were there, and there was a 20-foot high firewall. So if you look at these pine trees, so it was moving through the pine trees. When Russell went up in the helicopter, it was a 40-meter high fireball. So, again, and for those of you who've seen the images, the photographs people took from Walberswick looking south, and that huge fireball. And on that first evening, you could see nightjars flying around above the fireball. The staff could hear nightjars chirring in the background, and even the firefighters who are familiar with the birds could hear that happening. One positive aspect is it was the end of the breeding season. So most of the birds will have been at the end of their breeding cycle. And so the birds have that opportunity to fly ahead of the fire, not perish in the fire. So that's heartening to one extent, but the nightjars that will now be flying south of the Sahara for the winter, when they return next year, the habitat won't be there to support them. The other thing the fire service have reflected, as well as that unprecedented circumstance, is in 25 years of firefighting, they cannot recall a collaborative team spirit where everyone has come together to work together.
You see those apocalyptic pictures and you think, well, how can anything ever come back from that? But I think there is hope. As Adam said, there's a lot of unknowns. So that high temperature in the ground, usually, so that heath has been there in a very similar form since the 1800s, really, centuries. And so in that soil is this incredible seed bank and diversity. And how we usually manage that heath, we'll have a structure of about 30% really mature stuff, about 10 years old, which for heather is quite mature. About 30% somewhere between 5 and 10 years. 30% kind of developing, very, very new, and then about 10% bare ground. And we rely on that seed bank where we scrape back to bare ground. It springs back to life quite quickly. Now, there are concerns, as Adam said, about those temperatures, that it might have sterilised a lot of that seed bank. But what we're seeing is the most recent cuts, so where we've scraped back and when we have that very, very young heather, the fire in many places seems to have flashed over. So it was moving so quickly, again, as Adam described, that rapid rate of fire. It did catch everything in its path, but where it's very low, and we're seeing this on some of the trampled footpaths where you get a very low grass, it seemed to have skipped over. And we're seeing already shoots of green, and if it didn't take the foliage, it's likely, maybe likely that the roots have survived. And of course, we have these plots all over, like a patchwork across the heath. So we're hoping that some of those catch. There are other things we can do, so we can bring in that seed from elsewhere, and Adam described the brilliant connectedness of that landscape. Nature isn't really bothered about who owns what bit, whether it's a RSPB or a local farmer or whoever it might be, and we can bring in that seed from elsewhere. There are so many unknowns. The landscape was so changeable, so not only the fire, but these colossal earth-moving operations we had to do right through the middle of forests, through the middle of boundaries, to try and contain that fire. So again, we need to map out, get a handle on that, undo some of that, these banks up to 2 meters in many places, and then we'll be able to assess. But I think there is hope. The fire service have done such an amazing job and were absolutely prepared for anything you could reasonably conceive, anything you could reasonably think might happen in a prior time. Now we're seeing, as I said, the continent are absolutely prepared for these kind of events because they've been seeing them for decades, because these are the events that their climate brings about. They have access to helicopters, they have this lightweight clothing, they have access to 4x4s to get into difficult places. So we're simply asking the government to realise and recognise climate change and adapt our delivery methods so that, our firefighters are equipped to deal with this kind of stuff. If they'd have had that equipment very early on, we may have been able to contain and save some more of the heath. They did a fantastic job, but I think that is what is needed for the future.
The COBRA committee, so the emergency committee, met yesterday to discuss the government response to wildfire. So it is really high on the government agenda, and you'll probably know out of that there was some rhetoric about encouraging retailers to not be selling disposable barbecues. And I asked her about that this morning, and she was saying part of the reason that they're struggling with that is actually they want because you'll say don't sell disposable barbecues, and so someone will come up with something else to sell to replace a disposable barbecue. And what they would really like to find a way of saying is do not have any open flames in the countryside in conditions like this at all. And that's kind of where they're kind of wanting to head. So I think there is genuine commitment there. The fact that the National Trust had to find a helicopter that had come back from Greece, it was the first time a helicopter's ever been deployed in Suffolk to fight fire. But actually that recognition that, we need to recognise that we do need those resources that the circumstances are changing, and we need to respond like they do in Europe to situations in this country.
So now we're in extreme heat, extreme drought, and what we'll see in the winter is warmth in the winter and extreme downfalls. So what we're already seeing on the heath were the impacts of drought. So about 60% of the heather died in 2022. We were working extremely hard with a kind of broad array of partners on how that would recover. It was going really well, quite frankly, but we need to do more. And in the winter, we were seeing erosion. Some of our footpaths are very, very steep, and they were turning into waterfalls. So we were thinking about, actually, do we just plant over some of those footpaths and move the footpaths into less steep places? So we need to just make these landscapes more resilient to extreme events. And that might mean being smart. It's lowland heath. It's a dry habitat. It supports a very particular set of flora and fauna. But maybe we'll capture more water in the winter. So dig some ponds, dig some scrapes, hold that water so the impacts of drought during the summer are less. Being mindful that it's not a wetland, it's a heath. So again, it's that resilience to extreme events.
The other big thing about this event was sourcing the water to fight the fire. And again, I think it's somewhere, the farming community is looking for water to irrigate its crops. The wetland habitat has proved an incredibly valuable barrier. So, after the Second World War, the plan was to drain the Minsmere level and return it to agriculture. And if it hadn't been for the Ogilvy family and a conversation with the RSPB about turning it into a nature reserve, that land probably would have been drained. And that wetland has proved an incredibly good barrier to prevent fire spread. So just thinking about how we manage landscapes in light of climate change to try and manage all of that interest is going to be absolutely critical. And for those of you with Merlin running, hopefully you picked up the green woodpecker calling behind us as we were giving that answer. And I think the other thing, someone said to me about this, which I think is really critical. So we all live in homes that could catch fire, but we don't say from that we will leave and evacuate all our homes. All the wildlife that lives in these sites, that's its home. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is, rather than saying, we need to get rid of that, we need to think about how we make those homes resilient and prevent fire, much in the same way as we do for our own homes, and try and frame it in that way.
I did a book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. It was about a boy and his relationship with three animals, and a mole, and a fox and a horse. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to, first of all, the boy. And I used to see him on my bedroom ceiling, oddly. Is this boy facing the right way? Yeah. Hooray! Something's worked. So he would be, so I'd like looking up and I'd see this person. But actually, truly on a much bigger scale. So let's just look for something, looking for connection, looking for meaning, whatever we all look for. And then his first encounter is with who? Okay, very good. And he sits down in his own shadow, one slightly giving up. There he is. And up pops the mole. Yep. And I think, you see, I have to say that when I don't know whether you were following me on Instagram like a million years ago, like in 2016, 17, you kind of popped up out of nowhere. And I did a drawing of these two characters. And it was the drawing where the boy, I think I was reading a school magazine. The magazine, at the end of the school magazine, tells you about certain school leavers and how brilliant they are and how much money they made and how they've got 18 cars and 5 children, 4 houses, they live in Nottingham, also in Barbados. It's like, oh, well done. But, what are you like? Are you nice to a waiter?
Yeah.
Really? Like, are you a nice person? So I remember thinking that, so I thought, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the boy sitting on a branch. Well, I'm not sure why, maybe just I like the idea of it. And he's sitting on a branch, and the mole has a question. And the question is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the boy says what?
Kind.
Come on, you've read the book. Thank you, at least some of you have. Kind, said the boy. And I remember sticking this up on Instagram and just being shook when I went and ate some spaghetti or whatever and came back to look, and it was a real shock. And then I did another drawing where they met. I haven't really done this in order because we haven't introduced the fox yet, but there was a drawing I did of the boy sitting on the horse. And I have a friend who's a very brave explorer, and he defies death and climbs mountains upside down and does those things. And I was very brave. Oh, good for you. But I think courage has lots of different faces, and notably people who have cancer. I know some particularly brave people right now, going through storms. The thing about life is everyone's in a storm. Everyone in this place is in a storm. You can't see most of them. Some of them are very evident. Most of them are internal. Most of this, there's a quiet battle going with something. And that's why I think human beings are just incredible, because look at you. You've all managed to get here. You're wearing clothes, and you've got socks on, most of you. And you've eaten, and you've managed to pay the rent or the mortgage. It's just extraordinary that you've done it, and so well done. And I think when I made the second book, that's all I really wanted to say was, well done. You know, we've been through the last 7 years some extraordinarily difficult things. And we just like, we're in another one now. So why am I saying all this? Because someone gave me a coffee on the way. It's very evident, because I don't drink much, and when I have one, I just can't stop. So, anyway, so the boy's on the horse, and the boy says to the horse, should I draw it? I always, when I'm drawing, I think, do they really want to see it? Yes. No, I genuinely do think that. I genuinely am amazed that anyone's here. Like, honestly, when I said to Lindy, should we do this thing? She said, yes, well, we've got 10 days. Is anyone going to come? I thought, my brother-in-law and sister and a few friends might come if I pleaded with them. And they, but not this. You're amazing. Anyway, here's the boy on the horse. Here's, his little feet. That microphone doing its thing again. Okay, it's vague like this, and here's the fox. There's the ears. Paul. Nice. So, the boy said to the horse, and for me, horses are these powerful, strong, noble creatures. And the boy says, what's the bravest thing you've ever said? You ever said? And the bravest thing I've ever said was help. So I just wrote help. It didn't look very brave to most, but for me it really was. And for men, I think it really can be a brave thing to do. And I posted this on Instagram and on Twitter, I think, years ago, and then went and made some more food or did something, came back and was overwhelmed by emails and messages saying, the army in Canada, Australia, people want hospitals, schools, psychiatric units, can we use the drawing? And I was kind of shocked and thrilled that I could be asked. And I said, yes, fill your boots, help yourselves, and please, thank you. And that's when I started thinking, because I'm not a great one for working into a void. I like hearing from people. I like conversation. And so for me, this was a conversation I was having with a lot of people about what it is to be human, to be fragile, to be honest, to be on a journey, to be connected, what disconnection feels like. And the boy with all these questions. So the boy is just full of questions. The mole is sort of just obsessed with cake and is very gentle and kind, and reaches for cake when things are. I reached for crisps. When I was on my way back here and I was in a rush with my iPad, I thought, shall I have crisps or shall I just get there? And it was a genuine fight. No, I will not have those. Thank you. Maybe. The mole is a kind of addictive, I suppose, has this kind of, thing going on. And the horse is the deepest part of us, I think, who's tender and strong, and struggles too. And the fox interests me. I remember the fox arrived, and there were other characters around the place in my head, but the fox kind of stayed, because I like this idea. When the fox first turns up, he threatens the mole. I don't know if you remember this, he's caught in a snare. And, the mole, he says to the mole, if I wasn't caught in this snare, I'd kill you. The mole says, if you stay in that snare, you're going to die. And the mole saves the fox. And the fox, therefore, then is shown a really unconditional way of living. And it changes the fox. And the mole's love for the fox, for no reason, changes the fox's entire being. And the fox then saves the mole from drowning, so they become friends, and they become firm friends, and then they meet the horse. And so there are these four interplaying characters, and just travelling. And people often say to me, when I first putting the book together, they go, the book isn't about anything. What happens in the book? Why are there so many blank pages? Nothing really happens. And I was like, well, yeah, you're right, nothing really happens, but I quite like blank pages, and why not? And maybe people want to draw in them, and and so it was a very instinctual journey I made with both books, actually, and the film, is you just trying to do what you think is right. And we were told when I was making the film was too slow, too many pauses, etc. But I think in life, you just be true to what is inside of you, be true to what you want to do, and everyone can let them say what they want, and just don't give up. And so for me, these characters were I think, on this journey of questions and answers and finding ways of connection. When I think of, let's say, the response to the first book, and I always remember this day, in April 2020, I used to get thousands of emails, particularly from the NHS, and nurses and hospital wards saying various things. And this nurse wrote to me, and she said, I'm in a COVID ward, and I've lost 2 of my workmates to COVID in the last week, and I have no adequate PPE. We're all exhausted, and I'm completely terrified. Full stop. I just can't see a way through. And I always remember that line. I always remember reading it, going, what do you say to that? And listen, I'm just some bloke who's done a book with some animals and a boy with some questions. I'm no sage. But I just thought, okay, so I don't know what to say, but I'll do this. So I said, I don't know. I can't remember how I replied, but I said, I'm going to do your drawing. So I did this drawing. And the boy, and the fox. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Really? Good. And they're looking at what Dunwich Heath might have been until recently, which is very thick. And the boy saying, so I just wrote this, I can't see a way through, said the nurse. Boy. And the question was then, can you see your next step? You can't see a way through. Can you just look down and see the tiniest? Can you see one step? Can you just see that step? Forget about this over there, and that's too much. Can you see your next step? Next, can you read this? Yeah. At least I'm saying it. The boy says yes, and the answers will just take that. Just take that. And I did this drawing, and I sent it by email to the nurse and said, I hope this makes sense. And then about 4 days later, I got an email back saying, oh, that drawing's now on the internal screensavers of the of the NHS. And I cried. I think it was those moments that you just think, well, you know, if you get to a point in life where you've scratched around and made drawings and things, then suddenly you're making some drawings that can help people somewhere else, particularly in a pandemic. That was really, really moving for me.
Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. We really hope you enjoyed this special evening with Charlie Mackesy, the National Trust and the RSPB, and we'll be back with you in another video next week. Bye for now.